All right, hello everybody. It's Rusty with $30 Budget Vintage back again for another video, and I think that this one's very special. This is our first video in our installment of the Brewmasters Challenge, which is going to be a monthly competition that we're organizing going forward. Basically, the idea is that we give you, the community, a card to build around, and then you guys have some time to build your lists, your own unique take on it, and then you submit the lists, we trim them down to a top 4, and then we have the community vote on which one is their favorite. Now, it's not necessarily which one they think is the best. There's points for creativity and, interesting synergies and things like that. Maybe at some point we'll actually make like a more involved matrix. But, right now it's really just going to be favorite or coolest or best, whatever metric you'd like to use. You can vote in the Discord. There's a channel for it with a link to a straw poll, which I'll include in the video description. And we may do a short video announcing the winner. That'll be coming out in the next couple of days, because the winner is going to actually win free entry into our local Budget Vintage League. So that's starting up Thursday, the first Thursday in February. Entry is $10, and it'll be an 8-week league. You'll take your top 6 finishes, everyone's, and you'll get points based on that, and then the top 4 will split the 100% of the entry. And I'll be honest, we've been doing the basically no prize, no entry fee weeklies for the month of January. And we've had over 20 people each time, and I think we're above 40 unique entrants, because some people cycle through, right? Not everyone makes it all. So I am suspecting that this $30 Budget Vintage League over 8 weeks is going to have 40 to 50 entrants, which means that over the course of 8 weeks, you'll be competing for, I think that first gets like 50% of it or something. I don't know. Simon has a great rules document, but there's going to be like $500 on the line, which is crazy. So anyway, if you win the Budget Brewmaster Challenge this month, you get free entry. That's a $10 value with a lot of chance to win more, and you get the coveted Brewmaster role in the Discord. Link to the Discord below as well. I'm sure most of you know this, but we are a thriving Discord community. We're over 110 members as I record this, which I think is crazy. So good job, everyone. Keep it up. And now on to the deck list. Actually, one more thing. I have said this a few times, but we recently did have a pricing rules change. It should be the only one that we really ever see, but it is in regards to stickers and attractions. Those are now to be priced. They were previously free. I will probably include this data in 1 or 2 more videos, because I'm sure some of you are tired of me hearing it, but I just want to make sure that it gets, out to the masses, everyone knows. So that basically means if you're playing Mind Goblin, you have to pay an extra $1.50 to get all your sticker cards. You can actually put them in Moxfield. There is a sticker section, and the reason we changed that is because there's no feel bads associated with pricing them. There are feel bads potentially with not pricing them, and there is actually supply and demand. The 6 vowel sticker, which is the best one with Mind Goblin, actually has a higher price than the rest, so that shows that there is some amount of market data. So there are sales, so it should be tracked. So anyway, onto the deck list. We've got trimmed down to 4. Simon, Everett, and I had a great conversation about them. So this is list number 1. There's 4 total. This corresponds to the straw poll and the Discord, and after you watch this video, you are allowed to form your own thoughts and opinions. They don't have to match mine. Then you can vote for which one you think is the favorite. Voting is open for, I think, the next 3 days. Today's 1/28, so I think it goes until, it says in the Discord when it goes. I should probably know, but I don't. Sorry, guys. Alright, so first things first. I think this list is very cool. It's an Esper list. As you can see by the mana base, black's a fairly light splash, mostly for the $6.24 worth of unmarked graves. That's to set up our reanimate target. We also have 4 copies of Moonblessed Cleric. That's to help us find the Seance, the titular card, which actually, I guess I'll talk about Seance. So this is a funny card. It's something that there's been a guy who's been trying to spec on it for years. Like, he's been buying up a lot of copies. I think at some point he's paid people to burn their copies of Seance. He's offered like thousands of dollars in crypto reward to any pro player who like top 8s with Seance in their deck. So someone's like been trying to manipulate the market for a while, and basically I wanted to get in on that, so I'm trying to spike it in $30 vintage. It's an enchantment. Basically, every upkeep, that's my upkeep and your upkeep, the opponent as well. Is this card cracked in Commander? There's 4 upkeeps in Commander. Anyway, you basically temporarily reanimate a creature from your graveyard. You exile the physical card, you make a token copy, and then you exile the token copy at the beginning of the next end step. Notably, the card doesn't get haste, so you don't really get to attack with it. So that's one weird thing that we saw in the challenge, right? You have to find some way to get value out of reanimating your creature but not having haste. And notably, you also get to reanimate on your opponent's turn, which you can block with it, which is cool, I guess. And I think one of the challenges that Brewers had to overcome was how do we get value out of the reanimate on the opponent's turn, right? Because you're only getting value out of the one on your upkeep, like say by sacking it to a Cabal Therapy or something. I feel like you're kind of missing like half the card. You still get the ETB and the Leave the Battlefield effect. Which, on the note of Leave the Battlefield effects, I'm not going to sling too much shade, but I saw 0 copies of Sundering Titan in any of these decks. Isn't Sundering Titan good with this? Anybody? Blow up lands twice? Anyway, so that's Seance. This list I think is very unique because it's not like a value pile. It has a very clear and concise combo. Which is why we're playing so many tutors to get our Seance and our combo piece. And the goal is to put Mirror Mad Phantasm in the graveyard and reanimate it with Seance. There's a ton of text on Mirror Mad Phantasm. You can pause and read it. But the main takeaway is that if you have a token copy of it, like Seance, and you pay 1 and a blue, you attempt to shuffle the token copy into your... Or you shuffle the token copy into your library, but it ceases to exist because it's a token, and then you flip until you reveal Mirror Mad Phantasm, but it's not there because it's a token. Your deck gets milled, and then you have an Azami, a Labman, which are both humans, and an Angel of Glory's Rise in your Ben. So then you reanimate the Angel of Glory's Rise with the Seance, and that puts Labman and Azami into play on potentially your upkeep. Then you activate Azami, potentially twice, actually, which is cool, so you can beat a removal spell. Or I guess you could just go to your draw step, right? So you can beat 2 removal spells with this. Then you draw with an empty with an empty library, and you win through Labman. I gotta say, I did not see this synergy at all. I think it's very smart, because, and here's the important thing here, it has to be Seance in this case. It's not like you can just put Mirror Mad Phantasm into play or like reanimate it. Like Seance couldn't just be replaced by like 4 copies of Exhume or Life Death, because it matters that the Mirror Mad Phantasm that we're activating is a token. So it's really getting unique Seance value there. And I think that this is actually kind of hard to interact with, because once you set it up, you make the Mirror Mad Phantasm on your opponent's upkeep, and then removal's not really good for them because it's in play and you can just activate it. You mill your library, and then Seance triggers on your own upkeep. Obviously, it's very soft to graveyard hate, but we're not going to like take points away because the deck's soft to graveyard hate, because it's a graveyard build around, right? Every deck here is soft to graveyard hate. Maybe it's a little bit worse because it's kind of a one-shot. It's not like a value pile Seance. It's like if you get Tormod scripted, it's bad. You'd like lose the game. But that's okay. It looks like the deck has a pretty good sideboard plan in just, nice control cards. These all show up in blue-white control. I think that the 2-mana 1 or 2/1 that we played in Cephalid Breakfast that gives you hexproof could be useful, because that lets you beat Tormod scripts and Ravenous Traps. You still lose to like Cling to Dust and things, but I think that might be a card I'd be interested in seeing. Like maybe you sideboard that in place of the Wall of Omens or something. But overall, I just thought this was a really unique take. I think it's a very smart synergy. Shout out to, honestly, I forget who put this in. Shout out to the creator for picking up that synergy, because it's very, very smart. Sweet, next deck. This deck, I think this deck's very, very cool. So obviously there's 4 copies of Seance, where Esper, this mana base, is pretty similar to the one that we use in Esper Miracles. But this is a Seance dungeon deck. So it's dungeon value. There's not like a win the game combo. I think. I mean, God, who knows? There's a lot going on here. We have Frantic Search and Unmarked Grave, as well as Thirst for Discovery, to Ben our creatures. We also have, which, Frantic Search and Thirst also help find Seance, which is cool. This gives us additional dungeon triggers. This also lets us venture into the dungeon. Sephiroth, I think, is actually the most interesting, because when you have a Sephiroth in play, and Sephiroth is pretty castable, just discarding a creature card is going to trigger venturing into the dungeon, and when you do complete a dungeon, you get a real reanimate. So not only are we reanimating through Seance, we can also just like actually hard reanimate stuff, which is cool. I really like the Karmic Guides. I think that makes a lot of sense because it turns the temporary Seance reanimate into a permanent Seance reanimate. I think Radiant Solar is super smart because it puts itself in the bin via its single white activated ability. When you Seance it back, you do get to venture into the dungeon. If you Seance it back on your upkeep, then if you cast a creature just the old-fashioned way, you do get the non-token creature enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon text, so I think that's smart. I think Ashen Rider, like I mentioned with Sundering Titan, it's very smart because, actually, hold on. Okay, so there's two steps here. One, we want to get the Ashen Rider enters the battlefield and dies trigger, which I think is part of the reason for the 4 Viscera Seers. Because that lets us Seance back Ashen Rider, blow up a permanent, then use Viscera Seer to sack it, because Seance actually exiles it on the end step, so no sacrifice. So we sack the Ashen Rider, we blow up another permanent, or I guess we exile it, and we get some scry value as we go. I really like this deck. I think that, honest to God, if I had to register for Seance for the February 25th Winnetaiga tournament, shout out to the Winnetaiga tournament coming up. There's plenty of information in the Discord. I think I would probably start with this list and I would modify it. One thing I think that, okay, so first off, it's an $18 list. I think it got made a while ago, and some stuff like Frantic Search probably dropped, but we got some budget. There is no sideboard. I think that just didn't get made. No point lost for that. I'm sure the sideboard would have fine interactive cards or whatever. But, you know, there could be some counter spells, some Swords to Plowshares, just good cards. I would probably try to get a couple copies of cards that say take the initiative on them, because the initiative dungeon is so much stronger than the typical dungeons. So, like, Hama Pashar is really neat. But if we're just like making 2 1/1 goblin tokens, it's like, meh, it's fine. But if we're triggering really any of the initiative rooms, right? You would tutor 2 basic lands, you would put like 4 or 6 1/1 counters on a creature. There's like draw 2 cards. If you ever get to do the final room of it, you're flipping 20 cards and you're putting 2 creatures into play, which is crazy. So I think personally I would try to get the initiative in here. It makes Radiant Solars better as well. I think Nadar could maybe be replaced, but I don't know. The main takeaway is I really like this deck. The only note I have is maybe I would get the initiative into it in some capacity. So, big fan of this deck. I really like it. Deck number 3 could not be more different. These decks are so not the same at all. I'll let you guys take this in for a minute. This is red-white. And it's kind of like a sneak attack list. It's playing 3 Angers, which is pretty impressive given the budget. We're a little bit over, but, you know, it changed since it got submitted. Don't worry about it. 3 Angers so that your Seance tokens have haste. Our targets, Titanoth Rex, we can't actually cycle, by the way, no green mana. So we are just discarding with Bitter Reunion, Faithless Looting, and Thrilling Discovery, which is 10 discard spells. Pretty good there. We want to discard a fatty of some kind. Reanimate it with Seance, and have Anger in the yard. One thing we noted is that Seance is a may, it's not a must, so you're never forced to exile your own Anger, which is really good, because if Seance forced you to do it, like if Anger was the only creature in your graveyard, it'd be kind of like a non-bow. But no, this is done well. And we have 4 Flings to kill, in addition to some Lightning Bolts and Lightning Helixes. One thing we noted when we talked about this is that we'd like the Bolts and the Helixes because it shows like a mind for interaction. To like kind of slow things down against like at least some of the creature combo or creature aggro decks. One thing that I thought was really smart as well is the 4 Sunscorched Deserts. This is just a way of getting a couple extra points, 1 maybe 2 of damage, Because if you actually really start to look at the numbers of what happens when we succeed in enacting our game plan, the Sunscorched Desert actually looks really, really important. It's basically worth a card. If we do get to attack with a Impervious Great Worm and connect for 16 damage, 16 damage plus 1 Lightning Bolt is 19. Sunscorched Desert would be the 20th point and finish him off. Same deal for flinging this. Similarly, Inferno Titan, if you make an Inferno Titan and attack with it and put all the triggers on your opponent's face, it's 6 from the attack and 6 from the 2 3 damage triggers, so that's 12 damage total. Is that right? Yeah. And then if you were to fling the Inferno Titan, it's a total of 18 damage. So 2 Sunscorched Deserts would finish that off, which is nice, or like Sunscorched Desert plus a pump. When Vol is cool, it's like interaction almost. It's just going to buy some time and let us enact our game plan, make some angels. So yeah, I like this deck. I think it's very cool. I think it's like a cool, unique combo we take on it. But I think it's executed really well with the redundancy and the looting effects. Getting Anger was very smart. Fling, I think, is funny and cool. And I think the Sunscorched Desert is just a sweet piece of technology. So really good deck here. And this one is what I would kind of describe as what I imagine an typical Seance list to be. Basically, it's Abzan, and you're just using creatures that do some stuff. Satyr Wayfinder is a really good enabler because it's going to kind of keep the action going. You're going to mill some cards over. Maybe you find another Satyr Wayfinder, and that keeps your density, or I guess just your count of reanimate targets in your graveyard pretty high, which I think is going to help us make use of the Seance trigger on our opponent's upkeep. I also really like the 4 copies of Touch the Spirit Realm. First off, I just like this card. I'm a sucker for it. I think it's cool. But this is some redundancy to the Seance plan, right? It's just like another way to get an additional Siege Rhino trigger. I really like Commune with the Gods. I think that this does everything the deck wants to do. I would consider going up to 4 potentially, but it's going to stock our graveyard, find our Seance, and find our interactive creatures. So I think that's cool. If I had any notes, it would be maybe up to 4 Commune with the Gods. Then we just have a bunch of like ETB interactive creatures or value creatures. Rafine's Informant I think is smart. It's similar to Satyr Wayfinder. It just helps us kind of keep the Seance value going. Swords and Cabal Therapy are interactions. Cabal Therapy works well with Veteran Explorer. It also works really well with just our upkeep Seance triggers. You can sacrifice the Seanced creature to get a free Cabal Therapy flashback. Really good with Veteran Explorer for getting the Dies triggers as well. Yeah, I just think this deck is cool. It's very... it's what I think of when I think of Seance. If I was building a deck, I probably would have gone this route. It's too bad Stitcher's Supplier is a little expensive. I feel like that would fill a really good role here. But overall, I like this deck. It's more typical. There's a chance that this may just be the better way to go about it. You know, some of those all-in on the Seance plan decks are probably, like, realistically, and... Let me think how to phrase this. They're Seance combo decks, which I think is very much in the spirit of brewing, but realistically, if you were going to a tournament, you would maybe be more interested in having a backup plan so you don't lose to one Tormod script. So in that way, I think that this deck is like a very realistic take on what a person who's registering Seance would probably bring. Not that it's not possible to kill with like the Hasted Inferno Titan thing, or the Mirror Mad Phantasm combo. I'm just saying this is a little bit more grounded. And I think for these competitions, I think both are really good submissions. So as the viewer, I would encourage you to really think about whether, think about which one you want to vote for. Because I don't think that it's the spirit of this contest to just vote for what we think the most tournament viable deck is, because it's in the spirit of brewing, right? This format is a brewer's paradise, and this competition is just a chance for us all to flex our mental muscles, our deep Scryfall searches, and our knowledge of obscure interactions. So even if you, the viewer, think that this is like the best deck, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should vote for it over like the cool combo deck. And similarly, just because this is a really cool interaction doesn't mean that you should automatically vote for it over the really grounded, realistic list. So I think it's really you just got to dig deep and decide what you value as a brewer and what you're looking for in this competition. And to both the deck creators, I think that, you know, obviously one of you is going to win and the other one's not going to win. I don't think that you should change how you're brewing based on that for these competitions. I think you both did exactly the right thing. It's just different styles, you know what I mean? And there's plenty of room for that, and I was really excited that we saw so much diversity in this. Because, you know, like, it's not like we got 8 lists that were all Abzan, Shriekmaw, Cedar Wayfinder decks, which I thought was really cool. So I gotta say, hugely pleased with this. We had 8 entrants. We trimmed it down to 4 for this video. And I'm expecting this to be a staple. We will try to have a little bit more time for the next competition. So we'll probably actually select and announce the card for that pretty soon. Maybe give you guys a week or 2 to brew, and then we'll have some time to think on it, and we'll wrap that up by the end of February. So seriously, thank you to everyone who submitted. I think it's awesome that we had that level of engagement. I think this is a really cool thing. Feel free to message me or one of the other mods with like feedback or ideas you have, ways to improve it. But now it's time for you, the viewer, to vote. You guys can vote in the straw poll. You can also vote in the YouTube comments. 1 vote per YouTube account. We are only counting subscribed votes, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to vote. But I'll go ahead and say that we can probably count YouTube comment votes and straw poll votes separately. So like, you, the viewer, could potentially have 2 votes by using YouTube and straw poll. Am I farming engagement on my YouTube videos by doing that? I sure am. And if you love this community, then you want this YouTube channel to do well, so you might as well farm that engagement. So thanks for everyone who entered, and we'll announce the winner in a couple days, okay? All right, guys, thanks for joining me.